Hi folks, if you are looking for fun youth work activities today with your youth group, then you have come to the right place. I have come to Camo Tower at Camo Park in Edinburgh to tell you how I use a maths problem as a fun and challenging youth work activity. Let's do it. So the Camo Tower it's actually a water tower, and it was built in the early 19th century, and it was to provide water to the fancy gardens. It was one of the first sort of fancy gardens that sprung up around about Edinburgh at the time. And it's pretty weird to think that this thing here used to house water, whereas now you can probably hear it's just full of birds. The Tower of Hanoi was invented in the 19th century by a French mathematician called Edouard Lucas, around about the same time as this tower was being built. All right, and I'm going to again explain to you how I use the Tower of Hanoi, a maths problem, as a youth work activity. Here goes. So, how is a Tower of Hanoi a youth group or a youth work activity? You might be asking. Well, I would challenge you to think along the lines of this. If I've got a young person I'm working one-to-one, it's a great activity for them to show their problem solving skills or to develop their problem solving skills, critical thinking skills and all that kind of thing, patience and whatnot, right? I've worked with young people who were kind of cracking up at the activity, but they got there in the end. So, you know, resilience and patience and all these things that we want when we're working with young people, all right? And that's when it's one-to-one. It's really fun when you make it a team activity. So how do you make it a team activity? Well, if I've got a larger group, maybe four or three or four, I make it that each of them have to be responsible for one of the cones. So they need to work together to work out the system in order to complete the challenge of moving the tower from one peg to the final peg at the end. They've got to plan, they've got to critical think, as I mentioned before, and they've got to communicate and agree. And there's all these things. You'll see arguments. You'll always see the young person that knows the answer but nobody listens to them. This is a great opportunity for you to work with them and say, look, we Johnny there and we Sarah there, they knew how to do it, but nobody listened. All right. It's also a great way for people who maybe didn't get credit, they're maybe no particularly sporty, they're maybe no very academic, whatever it is. Sometimes they get their day in the sun because they're the person that can crack that code and they're the person that can teach the rest of the group or lead the rest of the group to success. So in that regard, for me, it's a brilliant youth work activity. The purpose of the Towers of Hanoi is to move these cones from here to here. But it's not as easy as just picking them up and moving them. Because on the ground, I've got three different stations. They're just three wee rocks. And there's a few rules that make it a wee bit harder to just move the cones from one end to the other. And I'll explain that now. So as I said, the idea is to get this stack of cones from here to the other end, the other peg, right? But a couple of rules. You can only move one cone at a time. Now this cone is got number 1. You might not be able to see it from there, but it's got a number 1 on it, right? I can move that one. In this case, I'm going to move it right away to the end peg, all right? End peg. I'm then going to head over here. I'm going to think, what can I move next? I've got number 2. Number 2 I'm going to move, but that's where the second rule comes in. I can only put number 2 into the middle peg here because I can't put a higher number on top of a smaller number. So I can't put number 2 on top of number 1. You can't put a higher value cone on top of a lower value cone. All right. So number 2 would have to move here. As I move on, I've now got a couple of options because I can move any of these cones with the only rules being the only one can move at a time. For example, I can't swap these over like that. You can't do that. But what I can do is I can move the 1 and stick it on top of number 2 and so on and so forth until I get all the cones for this side, as I showed you, all the cones from over there to over here, but in the order of 1, 2, 3, 4. So I demonstrated the Tower of Hanoi with massive cones, traffic cones, you might not have them. All right. What I think the beauty of this game is that you can do it even if you're just out about on a walk, or say you're on residential, like at the beach or at a loch, and you're looking for a wee activity that will challenge the young people that you're with. Then it's easy enough to grab wee things just like this. Because here, I just picked up some wee rocks, some wee stones that were about, and it's exactly the same thing. Smallest to the biggest, just with the same rules. Move one at a time. Larger can't go on top of a smaller one, and you've got to move it the 3 pegs, and then you're not even needing resources. You can actually make part of the challenge and part of the activity finding resources wherever you are, to go and do the challenge. So there you go, guys. I have brought to you how I use a maths problem as a youth work activity. If you've liked that content and you think it's useful for you and your youth group or whoever you work with, then please do hit that like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Catch.